Most people never consciously decide to give up on owning land. It happens quietly. First the prices feel high, then they feel unreasonable, and eventually they feel impossible. Somewhere along the way, land ownership gets mentally reclassified from delayed goal to unrealistic fantasy. And once that shift happens, people stop looking. They stop asking where land is still affordable. They stop questioning the narrative that everything worth owning has already been claimed. That narrative is convenient, but it isn't true. The United States is enormous, unevenly developed, and deeply misunderstood. Capital moves in predictable patterns. Jobs cluster. Infrastructure follows money. And land that sits outside those flows doesn't vanish, it waits. Sometimes for decades, sometimes for generations. Prices stagnate not because the land has no value, but because it refuses to conform to modern expectations of speed, comfort, and proximity. That refusal is the key to everything we're about to talk about. Land under $500 an acre still exists, but it does not exist where people want it to exist. It exists where patience is required, where responsibility is unavoidable, and where the owner, not the system, carries the weight. That's why it stays cheap. And that's why it attracts the wrong people just as often as it attracts the right ones. This is not a story about escaping society. It's about choosing your friction. Every place in this country extracts a cost. Expensive land extracts it through money. Cheap land extracts it through effort, time, and self-reliance. The mistake most people make is assuming cheap land is a discount version of expensive land. It isn't. It's a different product entirely. To understand where the best opportunities still exist, you have to stop thinking in terms of states and start thinking in terms of counties. States are branding exercises. Counties are where reality lives. Taxes, zoning, enforcement, water access, roads, and population density vary wildly from one county to the next, even within the same state. The difference between affordable land and unaffordable land is often a county line no one ever talks about. Far West Texas is a perfect example of that divide. Hudspeth County sits east of El Paso, stretched thin across thousands of square miles of desert and mountain terrain. It is one of the least populated counties in Texas, and that fact alone explains most of what follows. This is not drive-through land. You don't stumble into Hudspeth County on your way somewhere else. You go there because you intended to, or because you didn't realize how far you still had to go. The landscape does not try to impress you. It simply exists. Flat desert basins broken by sudden mountain ranges, endless sky, and a kind of silence that makes people uncomfortable if they aren't used to it. This is Chihuahuan desert country, and it is honest about what it demands. The appeal here is not scenery in the Instagram sense. It's autonomy. Hudspeth County has minimal zoning, minimal enforcement, and minimal interest in how you use your land. That absence of interference is not accidental. It's a byproduct of scale, distance, and limited resources. There simply aren't enough people or reasons to regulate most of what happens here. That freedom is real. You can live in an RV full-time. You can build without permits. You can camp, shoot, or leave the land untouched for years. But freedom here is not symbolic. It comes with total responsibility. Water is not provided. Power is not guaranteed. Roads are not always maintained. Summer heat is relentless, and help is far away. El Paso is roughly 2 hours from most parts of the county. Sierra Blanca provides the most basic services. Beyond that, you are on your own. That is not a warning. It is the product description. Land prices reflect this reality. 10-acre parcels selling for prices that barely register compared to suburban lots. 20 acres for what some people pay for a used car. On a per-acre basis, prices often fall under $500, sometimes far under, but every dollar saved up front is exchanged for responsibility later. Hudspeth County rewards people who want to be left alone and punishes people who expect the land to meet them halfway. Move north into Arizona and the terrain changes dramatically, but the underlying logic stays the same. Apache County occupies the far northeastern corner of the state, and most people misunderstand it because they misunderstand Arizona. This is not endless heat and sand. Much of Apache County sits around 6,000 feet above sea level. Winters are real. Snow is common. Summers are mild compared to southern Arizona. Pine forests break up open grasslands, and the land feels expansive without feeling barren. The county is enormous and sparsely populated. Towns exist, but they are small and widely spaced. Services are limited. Medical care beyond basics requires planning. Internet access is often satellite. Winter storms can isolate areas for days at a time. And yet, Apache County offers some of the lowest land prices in the country. There are subdivisions where acreage sells for prices that sound like errors. Under $100 an acre is not unheard of. Sometimes it's lower. These listings are real, but they come with conditions that aren't always obvious at first glance. Distance, access, and infrastructure are the reasons these prices exist, not deception. The people who succeed here understand that they are buying space, not support. They plan redundancies. They accept delays. They don't assume the county will solve problems for them. Apache County favors people who value silence, dark skies, and independence over convenience. It is unforgiving to those who expect modern life to function unchanged in a remote setting. Just west of Apache County lies Navajo County, and this is where the spectrum begins to shift. Still northern Arizona, still elevated, still cooler than the desert lowlands, but noticeably more developed. Towns like Show Low and Snowflake provide hospitals, schools, grocery stores, and basic services that Apache County lacks. Roads are better. Infrastructure is more consistent. Life is easier. That ease comes at a price, but not an unreasonable one. Land here costs more, but affordability still exists, especially when buying larger parcels. Properties under $500 an acre are less common than in Apache County, but they are far from impossible. Property taxes remain low. Access to national forests adds recreational value that doesn't require ownership. Navajo County attracts people who want land without full isolation. Retirees, remote workers, and people looking for seasonal living often find this county strikes a workable balance. It is not frontier land, but it has not yet been fully absorbed into the mainstream market either. From the southwest, the conversation changes again. When you move into southern Colorado, Castilla County sits in the San Luis Valley, framed by mountain ranges that make the land feel both protected and exposed. This is high elevation territory. 7,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level is common. Summers are short, winters are long, cold, and not negotiable. The views are extraordinary. Open valley floors, mountains in every direction, and skies so dark they feel almost artificial. This is the version of Colorado most people imagine, minus the ski towns and resort pricing. But the land demands respect. Wells can be deep and expensive. Growing seasons are short. Most properties are off-grid. Alamosa is the nearest service hub, and it is limited. This is not land that forgives poor planning. Prices reflect that. 5-acre lots selling for prices that would be impossible in most of the state still appear here. Larger tracts can fall under $1,000 an acre, sometimes under $500 when bought in bulk. People buy Castilla County land because they want Colorado without compromise on space, not because they want ease. Huerfano County, nearby, offers a different proposition. Lower elevations, better access, and the presence of Interstate 25 shift the balance. The Spanish Peaks dominate the landscape, and towns like Walsenburg and La Veta provide basic services and a sense of community that more remote counties lack. This area has been discovered, but it hasn't been consumed. Prices are rising, but undeveloped land under $500 an acre still exists, particularly in larger parcels and less obvious locations. Utilities are more common. Internet access is improving. Huerfano County appeals to people who want mountain scenery without total isolation, but it rewards decisiveness. Bargains do not wait. As we move south into New Mexico, proximity becomes the defining factor. Valencia County sits just south of Albuquerque, and its value comes from what it allows you to do without fully committing. You can own land with open desert views and still reach a major city in under an hour. That combination changes the risk profile entirely. The landscape is high desert, dry, open, and bright. Property taxes are low. New Mexico remains friendly to retirees. Some subdivisions offer utilities, others do not. Water is the central variable. Well depths vary. Costs fluctuate. Wind can dominate certain seasons. Despite that, pricing remains aggressive. Small lots sell for amounts that barely register compared to urban markets. Larger parcels regularly fall under $500 an acre. Owner financing is common, lowering the barrier to entry. Valencia County works best for people who understand due diligence and don't confuse proximity with simplicity. Everything shifts again when you cross into southeastern Oklahoma. Choctaw County feels almost like another country compared to the desert west. The land is green, forested, wet. Creeks run through properties. Wildlife is abundant. The growing season is long, and the land itself is forgiving in ways arid regions are not. Infrastructure exists. Roads are usable. Water access is more reliable. This is land you can work without fighting it constantly. Prices remain low because the economy is limited. Jobs are scarce. Healthcare is basic. Severe weather is part of life, but large tracts selling for under $1,000 an acre are common, and when parcels get bigger, prices can dip under $500. Choctaw County offers practical land at prices that feel out of sync with its usability. Right next door, Pushmataha County takes that practicality and adds seclusion. Heavily forested and rugged by regional standards, this county is known for hunting, privacy, and dense timber. The terrain makes building more complex, but isolation is almost guaranteed. Land prices mirror Choctaw County, but the experience is different. Pushmataha County attracts people who want land that absorbs them rather than showcases them. It is not about views. It is about withdrawal. By the time you reach Arkansas, the conversation begins to tilt toward livability. Baxter County sits in the Ozarks and has become a magnet for retirees. Lakes, rolling hills, and improved infrastructure have changed the county over time. Mountain Home offers healthcare, shopping, and amenities that many rural areas lack. That growth has consequences. Lakefront land is expensive. Affordable acreage still exists away from water, but bargains require effort. Larger tracts under $1,000 an acre still appear, but they do not linger. Baxter County represents the transition point between affordability and popularity. And finally, there is Clay County, Kansas. This is traditional Midwestern land. Prairie, agriculture, roads, utilities, schools, healthcare, uncare. Everything works. And because everything works, prices reflect stability rather than neglect. Some pasture land still dips under $500 an acre, but it is not common. This is not land for escape or experimentation. It is land for continuity. By the end of this first half, a pattern should be clear. The cheapest land demands the most from its owner. The most balanced land costs more. And every step toward comfort comes with a corresponding step away from price extremes. In the second half, we'll go deeper. Who actually succeeds on cheap land? Who fails? The mistakes that turn affordable into regret. And which of these counties truly belong at the top when the numbers, the realities, and the psychology are all weighed together? By this point, a certain tension should be settling in. Cheap land sounds attractive, but it no longer sounds simple. That tension is not a flaw in the idea. It is the idea. The people who succeed with inexpensive rural land are not the ones chasing a deal. They are the ones who understand what the deal actually is. Every county we've talked about so far filters people in different ways. Some filter by climate, some by distance, some by economics. What matters is not whether a place is cheap, but whether its friction matches the kind of pressure you can live with for years at a time. Most failures happen because people underestimate that friction. The most common mistake is assuming that land functions like housing. A house comes with systems already in place: roads, power, water, waste, emergency services, and neighbors who create social gravity. Raw land offers none of that by default. It offers potential, and potential is neutral. It does not care whether you are prepared. This is where buyer psychology becomes more important than geography. People who succeed with cheap land tend to share one trait: they think in systems. They ask how water will be secured before they worry about views. They ask how access works in winter before they imagine summer evenings. They think about redundancy because they assume things will fail. They do not expect the county to rescue them from poor planning. People who fail tend to share a different trait. They think in images. They imagine freedom as an aesthetic rather than a responsibility. They see open land and assume solutions will appear because the land was inexpensive. That assumption is the most expensive mistake cheap land can produce. Water is the clearest example. In desert counties like Hudspeth, Apache, Navajo, and Valencia, water is not a background utility. It is the primary constraint. Wells can be shallow or impossibly deep, depending on location. Costs vary wildly. Some parcels will never produce reliable water at any reasonable price. The land is still cheap because that uncertainty exists. The people who thrive in these counties either know how to assess water risk or accept hauling and storage as a permanent feature of life. The people who struggle assume that water will behave the same way it does near cities. It will not, and the land does not forgive that misunderstanding. Access is the second trap. Many cheap parcels are cheap because they are technically accessible, but practically isolated. Dirt roads that are passable in dry weather can become impassable after storms or snow. Counties do not always maintain these roads. Some never have. If your land depends on a single access point and that point fails, you are not inconvenienced, you are stranded. This is why people who buy land successfully often visit multiple times in different seasons before committing. They want to see the land when it is uncooperative. Anyone can love a property on a perfect day. The land reveals its truth when conditions are bad. Utilities follow the same pattern. Power may be available at the road, but costs tens of thousands of dollars to extend. Internet may exist in theory, but collapse under real-world use. Cell service may work in one corner of a parcel and disappear in another. The counties we've discussed are cheap because these systems are inconsistent, not because they are non-existent. Then there is the question no one likes to talk about until it's too late. Isolation. Isolation is not the same as privacy. Privacy is chosen. Isolation is experienced. The difference becomes clear over time. In places like Hudspeth County or parts of Apache County, isolation is not occasional. It is constant. That can be deeply satisfying or deeply destabilizing, depending on the person. Some people need friction to feel grounded. They need human contact, predictable schedules, and external structure. Cheap land removes those things. It replaces them with silence and responsibility. That trade is not reversible without cost. In contrast, counties like Navajo or Valencia offer a partial buffer. You can retreat, and re-engage. That flexibility costs more, but it reduces the psychological risk that causes many people to abandon land after a few years. The eastern counties introduce a different set of pressures. In Oklahoma and Arkansas, water is less of a concern, but maintenance becomes constant. Vegetation grows aggressively, roads wash out, storms damage structures. Wildlife is abundant and persistent. The land works with you, but it also demands ongoing attention. People who come from arid regions often underestimate this. They imagine green land as easier land. In reality, it is simply a different kind of work. The land will grow whether you want it to or not. Fences, clearings, and buildings require continuous upkeep. This brings us to the uncomfortable truth about cheap land that no one likes to admit. Resale is not guaranteed. Land does not behave like housing in liquid markets. Cheap land can stay cheap for decades. Sometimes it never appreciates meaningfully. Sometimes it only sells when the right buyer happens to appear. If you need guaranteed liquidity, inexpensive rural land is the wrong asset. This is why the most successful buyers treat cheap land as a long-term holding or a functional asset, not a speculative investment. They buy it to use it, not flip it. They measure value in autonomy, stability, and optionality rather than price appreciation. With that context, the rankings begin to make more sense. At the lower end sit counties where affordability no longer compensates for constraint. Clay County, Kansas is stable, functional, and predictable, but because it works so well, prices rarely drop low enough to create meaningful leverage. This is land for continuity, not transformation. Baxter County, Arkansas follows a similar trajectory. Infrastructure, healthcare, and amenities improve quality of life, but they also attract demand. Affordable land still exists, but the window is narrowing. This is land you buy because you want to live there, not because it is cheap. Moving upward, counties like Costilla and Huerfano in Colorado offer beauty at a price that is still within reach, but the environment demands respect. Winters are serious. Infrastructure is limited. The land rewards preparation and punishes optimism. These counties sit in the middle because they offer something extraordinary, but require genuine adaptation. Valencia County and Navajo County rise higher because they balance affordability with access. They allow retreat without complete separation. They are forgiving enough to support learning curves without eliminating responsibility. These counties work for people who want land as part of a broader life, not as an absolute statement. The Oklahoma counties stand out because of usability. Choctaw County offers green, productive land at prices that feel disconnected from its practical value. Pushmataha County offers seclusion and wilderness without extreme remoteness. Both counties remain affordable because the economies are limited, not because the land is poor. For many buyers, this balance is ideal. At the very top sit the counties that force the clearest choice. Hudspeth County, Texas offers unmatched freedom at a price that almost feels confrontational. The land does not pretend to be easy. It offers control without comfort. For the right person, that is priceless. For the wrong one, it is unbearable. Apache County, Arizona earns its place not just because of price, but because of contrast. High elevation, real seasons, massive scale, and land prices that still feel like they belong to another era. The land is cheap because it refuses to bend to convenience. Those who adapt gain something increasingly rare. These top counties are not better in an absolute sense. They are simply more honest. They ask the question up front instead of hiding it behind amenities. How much responsibility are you willing to carry in exchange for autonomy? Cheap land is not an escape hatch. It is a commitment to slower timelines, personal systems, and long-term thinking. It strips away the illusion that infrastructure is automatic and replaces it with choice. For some people, that choice feels like relief. For others, it feels like weight. The land does not care which one you are. It only responds to preparation. The mistake is not buying cheap land. The mistake is buying land without understanding what it expects in return. If you understand that exchange, these counties are not compromises. They are leverage points in a country that has quietly priced out convenience. And that is the real divide. Not between cheap land and expensive land, but between people who expect the world to work for them and people who are willing to work with the world as it actually is.